Hey guys, Jake Carlson here, host of the Modern Leadership Podcast. Are you ready to focus on amplifying your leadership superpowers? Let's go! Good morning, my friends and fellow elite achievers. Welcome to Modern Leadership, the podcast where each week we sit down with authors, entrepreneurs, and leaders to explore their journey, diving into the ups, their downs, and ultimately the lessons they learned along the way. Our goal, of course, is to show that everything is figure-outable. Today's guest expert is Gregg Ward. Gregg is an award-winning, best-selling author, speaker, facilitator, and executive coach who is the voice of respect. He's on a mission to drive leadership and organizational transformation through the practices of respect and respectful leadership. You know, we're going to talk about respect today. You'll recognize some of his clients: Harley-Davidson, Intel, Qualcomm, Warner Brothers, the U.S. Navy, a bunch of great companies. His most recent book, The Respectful Leader. I don't know why, Gregg, I am bouncing all over that word. The Respectful Leader, which was selected as an Amazon Best Book of the Month and recently won a gold medal for the Best Business Fable in the prestigious Axiom Business Book competition. Gregg, through all of that jumble, it is so great to have you on the show. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
And what our listeners don't know is that you and I just spent the last 10 minutes talking about San Diego and how wonderful it is to share that in common. I lived there in the past. You live there now. So tell us, how are things going today?
Today, it's, shall I just say, it's another beautiful day in San Diego. We are so fortunate to live here. It's a little overcast today, but it's in the 70s. And if I were to complain about this, I think I should be hit over the side of the head.
Well, one of the jokes that we used to say when I lived in San Diego is the best job in the business is being a weather forecaster in San Diego. You wake up, you make six figures, and you tell everybody it's going to be gorgeous. The fog will burn off by 11.
It's so true. And when they tell us it's going to rain, we all go, no, it's not. It doesn't rain in Southern California. And then, of course, it sometimes really does.
Yeah. In fact, we were there one time. It rained so hard that within the first hour of rush hour, they had registered over 308 car accidents.
Yeah.
And because the way the water pools on the freeway, it's scary.
It is scary. Now, I'm originally from New York, and I lived in Boston for many years. I'm kind of used to driving in poor weather, but I have noticed that, native Southern Californians are not quite used to it. So they kind of think, oh, it's raining, so what? I'll just go 75 miles an hour. It doesn't matter. It does matter.
I was from the snow. I was born and raised and grew up in the snow, and I met my wife in San Diego. And when we were deciding where we were going to have our final resting place, where we were going to raise our kids and such, she said, anywhere that I don't have to shovel the snow. And we don't have to shovel any snow out here in Arizona or in San Diego. So both great places.
That's true. Although the mountains an hour away, you can be 4,000 feet up. And my best friend lives up there in Laguna, the mountains up there. She got snow last weekend, about 3 inches.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
All right, Gregg, we could rap about San Diego all day long, and you and I could reminisce and have all these great. But we got to talk about this respectful leadership. And even though I can't pronounce it every time, this is so important. And I was mentioning that in 340 episodes, this is the first time we've taken this topic head on. And so I'm glad to have you on the show. But tell us, why this topic? Why respectful leadership? And why now?
I think what a lot of us are experiencing is something that we can't quite put our finger on. And those of us who live in this world and have been researching this, what we've tended to notice in the last 30 to 40 years is that the amount of disrespect in the workplace specifically is actually going up and up and up. And people say, okay, what do you mean? And I said, it could be as simple as somebody always cutting you off during a meeting. It could be somebody ignoring you. It could be somebody even doing what we call micro messaging, where they're just rolling their eyes at you. It could be really simple, subtle stuff. But the research and the science behind it is actually very robust. And what we've come to find out is that respect and disrespect are very powerful. There's tend to be unconscious and subconscious. But what we like to say is, when there's plenty of respect in a workplace, it's kind of like air. No one really thinks or worries about it when there's plenty of air. When there's a lack of air or a lack of disrespect, it's all anybody can think about. So it's an unconscious thing. It is yet very, very powerful and very, very subtle. And it is also very variable, depends on who you are. But what we have found and what researchers have found is that respect can have and disrespect can have very significant impacts on performance, productivity, and partnership. And what you and I are being asked to do in our workplaces more and more and more is do more with less, work in a flat hierarchy, work remotely, and get things done at a quicker and quicker pace with all sorts of technology and other equipment, such as these things constantly distracting us and getting us in trouble. So the point is there is no one factor that is contributing to all the disrespect we are feeling, but it is definitely something we have measured, and it is definitely having a negative impact on our workplace. And so long time ago, I was a trainer for the New York City Police Department. And I learned really quickly that being a cop is a thankless job.
Yeah.
And people disrespect you a lot. And you have to, A, develop a very thick skin, and B, you have to try to look past, if you're a good cop, you have to try to look past the broken people that you are encountering all the time and figure out a way to be compassionate, to get the job done, to enforce the law. I'll tell you, I couldn't be a cop. And so at the end of the day, we have to understand how important respect is as leaders in our workplaces, because if we don't, there's actually a lot of data shows it's very, very expensive to not have a respectful workplace.
So I want to take us back a little bit, because you make a great case for why respect is important, and all the evidence that we just discussed of how it seems to be diminishing now, or we're seeing less of it in the workplace. The question that I ask is why? And I know we want to pick on the millennials sometimes and kind of the way that they're raised, but what is the cause? What is the root cause of this?
Well, that is the $10,000 million question. And it's a very good question. And I wish I had a simple answer for you. Dr. Christine Porath at Georgetown University, who is probably the foremost expert on respect and civility in the country, she says that it's a lot about stress, that a lot of us are under enormous amounts of stress. One of the anecdotal things that I'm hearing from colleagues and people in the speaking world and learning and development world and leadership development world, we're hearing that our workplaces are more stressful now than they have been for a long, long time, not since the height of the Vietnam War, when we were all really on edge. Our society was on edge.
Is there a theory as to why?
Yes. Well, the stress comes from the demands that are being put upon us to do more with less, as they say. The stress is also, no one can deny that in the last few years, society is experiencing more and more stress, even though we've been very successful. In many cases, what we're also seeing, and this is not me being political, this is just the data, that the gap between the wealthy and the poor is widening. And there is no real middle class in this country anymore, at least not the way there was during the 60s and 70s. So what a lot of us are seeing who are not wealthy, we're seeing that we're feeling like we're spinning our wheels. Many of us, I mean, how many of us are now in two-income households? Probably the vast majority of us. Whereas when we were growing up, I'm 60 years old. When I was growing up, my dad brought home the money. He was the primary breadwinner. And a lot of my friends, their dads were the same. everything's changed now. So we're all spinning our wheels and working all these jobs, and the gig economy and the lack of financial supports and all of these things are making us all very, very stressed out. So what do? We take it out on each other at work. And there's an old saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. I add to that phrase, when the going gets tough, the tough get tough on each other.
Yeah, and I can see that happening. I wanted to ask you a little bit about job security. And, there's no more pensions, and we don't know what Social Security is going to have, and we don't know when we're going to be able to retire. I think there's a lot of people in the workforce today that basically just figure they're going to work forever until they drop dead. How does that job security play into this?
A huge amount. We've just come through one of the most disastrous economic emergencies that we've ever experienced, and we're still feeling enormous impacts from that.
And probably will for the foreseeable future.
I agree. Could be years and years, decades.
Could be. I hope not.
Yeah. I hope not, too.
As a small business owner, I hope not.
I'm in the same boat. I feel that way, too. So I think that... what is it they say? How many people are actually invested in the stock market? Well, a lot of us saw our savings, our investments really significantly reduced. So there goes that cushion that we thought we could count on. I happen to have an annuity. That is a very safe investment. Thank goodness I took it out years ago. And, everybody laughed at me. Annuities, that's not an investment. That's you're not going to get anything from that. Well, you know what? I'm really glad I have that annuity. But
I bet that company's kicking itself.
I'll bet you they are. Oh, well.
That's right. That's risk and reward. I mean, that's what we're investing. That's investment.
That's right. So there are not many of us who actually have that kind of cushion. And so if you don't have any kind of financial cushion and you're literally living paycheck to paycheck and you don't even know, you're in an at-will kind of situation and you don't know if you're going to be out of a job next week because somebody in leadership made a dumb call on something. I don't know about you, but boy, I would find that extraordinarily stressful. I'd be constantly looking for another job, thinking the grass must be greener somewhere else. And
when you say grass is greener, I can't help but jump in and say the grass is greener where you water it, my friends.
I like
Stay
that.
where you're at, water where you're at, because that's where the grass is greener. Now, Gregg, we got to shift gears a little bit because you've built this up. We know the challenge. It's this stress. It's the reality that's out there. And the listeners to this podcast are the leaders. And so we're the ones that have control over the influence, the impact, the culture within our offices, within our businesses. So what I want to do is I want to talk about, you've got 7 ways that a leader can influence without using intimidation. And so let's walk through a few of those ways. Maybe we can get to all 7 in the time we have. How can we as leaders use our influence, get our teams to move in the right direction, to work hard, to be efficient, to do all those things without coming down with that iron hammer?
Yeah. And what really heartens me is I meet more and more leaders these days who really want to understand what we call the respectful dues or the practices of respectful leadership. So I'm going to cover a few of them for you. I think all 7 would take us a bit more time than we need to, but I want to cover the ones that seem to be really resonating right now with a lot of people. And it's the very first one I want to cover is respectful do number 1. Be the first to respect. Now, what that essentially means is, as a leader, sometimes we tend to think people ought to respect us first because we're the boss. Or
I've got the title.
I've got the title, or I've got the bars on my shoulder in the military and that kind of thing. And you know what? I understand that, but these days, people don't necessarily respect you just because of your title. They actually expect you as the boss to earn their respect. And this, again, will get people's hackles up. Wait a minute, my people need to earn my respect, not the other way around. No, actually.
Don't I give them a certificate of appreciation every 2 weeks called a paycheck?
No, not really. I think you should acknowledge them. I call that's respectful. Do number 5. You should do what I call finding diamonds in the rough. That's all about making sure that we not only catch people doing something, making mistakes, but let's also catch people doing things right. So in being the first to respect basically says, look, treat everybody you meet, everybody you come into contact with, no matter who they are, with respect first. The common courtesies, hello, good morning, how are you? The basic stuff that we learned as children, but we forgot when we got older and became all stressed out.
Golden rules stuff.
Yeah, it's basic stuff. It's just what you and I know as common courtesy. So if you as a leader treat everyone in your organization with respect first and just say please and thank you and do this genuinely, people perceive that as respectful to them. And that's where the science comes in, because if I treat you in a way that you perceive to be respectful, that you want to be treated, what's called the platinum rule, do unto others as they want to be done unto, your brain will actually release a hormone called oxytocin. It's also known as the bonding hormone, the love hormone, blah, blah, blah. You get a little hit of oxytocin, but here's what's also interesting. So do I. If I treat you with respect in a way you find respectful, you get it, and so do I. That hormone basically makes us feel good. And after a while, we start seeing each other with what I call sunglasses on. And on the lenses, it says respectful person. And it's a really simple thing, and it's contagious. If I respect you, you'll respect other people, and so on down the line. So the reason I want leaders to be the first to respect is because it demonstrates you're making the effort. You're being intentional to be respectful rather than waiting for others to be respectful to you first, because then you're sending a message that this is transactional rather than you giving to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Have you done any research or looked into this idea that leaders maybe feel like they're being respectful, but the perception and reality problem, where
Yes.
I as the leader think that I'm being respectful to my team, but they look at me and go, man, that Jake, he's a jerk.
Yes. And what that's about is because many of us live by what's called the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, I'm assuming that you're a straightforward kind of guy. And I think you've got a law degree. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I've learned growing up, I know many lawyers, you tend not to mess with lawyers. You need to be direct. You need to be clear. They're good people, but they brook no BS or things like that. So if I am the kind of guy who is perfectly comfortable with you treating me directly, being very clear, no BS with me, well, you've just treated me using the golden rule. You've treated me the way you like to be treated, okay? But let's say I am uncomfortable with that kind of direct approach, and you keep doing it to me. Mm-hmm. That is going to be, in my mind, you not hearing how I respond to you. And so I think this is the complaint that a lot of leaders who are very direct, who are, the so-called type A personalities, the dominant style, those folks are saying, hey, I'm just treating people the way I think they should be treated based on my perceptions. But what that leader needs to understand is not everybody wants to be treated the same way. And so it's your job. I say this to leaders all the time. You're the one who gets the big bucks to treat people in a respectful way that they want to be treated. It's not about how you want to be treated, it's how they want to be treated. If you treat them in ways that they want to be respected, well, by golly, they'll step up and they will feel empowered and they'll do the things you want them to do. But if you disrespect them, or treat them in the ways that they don't find disrespectful, don't be surprised if they're not going to step up and if they're going to be complaining about you.
Do you get pushback from leaders ever that say, my people are just soft?
Yep, all the time. And they say, oh, these people are snowflakes, especially they love to go after the millennials and all this kind of stuff. In my day, and here's what I say a lot about this, but I'll boil it down to this. Just because you were treated like crap when you were coming up through the ranks doesn't mean you should treat other people like crap too. Just because you paid your dues and got beat up or whatever happened to you doesn't mean you should treat others that way. Because how did you feel when you were getting disrespected by your leadership as you were coming up? And if you thought, okay, this is the way to get ahead in the world, well, how sad. How sad. You can get ahead. You can get just as much out of somebody by treating them with respect as if you treated them and bullied them and all that kind of stuff.
And you talked about this a little earlier in the program. You were saying that it's not just how we feel. It's not just about going home and being able to put our heads on our pillow at night and sleep comfortably knowing we treated everybody well. There's actually a financial business success backbone to this as well, right?
Absolutely. All the research we've done shows that if you create a respectful culture where not only you're behaving as a respectful leader, but so are your colleagues, so are the leadership, so are your team. The old saying is you take care of your people, they will take care of your customers. You treat your people with respect, they will treat your customers with respect. It is contagious. And all the data, all the business cases that we have seen have said that cultures that are highly respectful actually have much better sustainable outcomes over time. In fact, when the going gets tough, when there's a crisis, if you have a respectful culture, you're much more likely to have your team step up and go the extra mile for a longer period of time and stay resilient than if you had a culture, what we call the command and control culture. Do what I say because I'm the boss, or you're out. And
that might give you short-term boost. I mean, that
yes.
might give you, you could kind of bully your way to success in the short term. But we need to remember as business leaders that this is the long game. I mean, we're going to be doing this for a long time. And by building a foundation of respect, that's going to allow us to have this success move beyond just a quick flash, rise in stock value or rise in company value.
Yeah, I think we're finally understanding that quick flash is really good for a couple of people.
Yeah.
Who then
outliers
sell out and get out, right? This is the founder syndrome where they just build something, it just goes big and huge, and then they cash out. That's great for them. And then there's everybody else. How many times have we heard about cultures where the founders did that, and then the moment they sold out, everything came crashing down? So we are starting to realize that the most profitable long-term investment we can make is in treating our people with respect, because it will be paid back over and over again if we do. And there's the data's out there that makes that undeniably clear.
So
there's also the reverse data.
Go ahead.
There's also if you create what's called a toxic work culture, boy, is that data clear. There's direct expenses, there's complaints, there's turnover, there's people leaving, there's people sabotaging, you name it, that's out there. And what about the indirect costs? If you decide you're fed up with your organization, you leave, well, they got to replace you. There's that time lost while you're gone. There's the recruiting process. There's the bringing the person up to speed. What about the people who are left after you're gone? There's tons of costs. And the other one that I always love to bring up, which is really hard to quantify, is the impact on your organization's reputation. Because in the old days, when we were pissed off at our bosses and we just wanted to leave a job, who did we tell? Well, we told our friends and our family.
Our circle of influence, smaller.
Yes, it's very small. These days, if we're pissed off at our employer, who do we tell?
Social media.
It's a website called Glassdoor. Yeah, Zootopia, Glassdoor. People go on there and they rip a new one. So it's really something we as leaders have to be aware of, that it's too damned expensive to be disrespectful.
Yeah, and we just scratched the very tip of the surface here. We jumped into number one, way to influence without intimidation by being the first to respect. We touched a little bit on number 5, finding diamonds in the rough, catch people doing right. Yep. Where can we find the other 5? Because we don't have time to talk about them right now.
Okay, you can go to my book website, respectfulleader.com. And you can find all about those. And also, if you go to the GreggWardGroup.com, which is my company, Gregg, Ward, Ward, untitled.com, and you'll find a lot of resources there. I've also founded a new organization called the Center for Respectful Leadership, and that's a nonprofit. So it's respectfulleadership.org. Bunch of resources there as well. So there's a lot of places to go for it.
And we'll link all that up on the show notes so they can just go and click through. And I really recommend that the listeners go and really dive into these because, as I mentioned, this is something that we haven't spoken about very often. And it's clear just from the few minutes that we've spent together that this is so valuable and so important on so many different levels. But unfortunately, we're running to the end of the podcast. It's time now to switch gears a little bit, go to my favorite section, Learning from Leaders. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Go for it.
All right. Our first question in this section is the book currently on your Kindle or bedside table. What are you reading these days?
I am reading actually a very old book, and I have it here right with me. It's A Guide to Rational Living, and it's actually been around. It's been reissued many, many times. It is all about how you respond to your world and how you manage yourself and your upsets and your focus. It is absolutely a standard Bible that I think every leader should read.
And so I assume this isn't your first go through it. What made you pick it up again recently?
Because during this crisis, everybody's been pretty damned irrational.
Yeah.
Our leaders have been very irrational.
Sometimes you got to take a step back.
Yeah.
Think about all the blessings, go through an experience of gratitude. I just said to my daughter the other day, she's 12, and she was having one of those days. It seems that as she gets closer to 13, she has more and more of those days. But I had her sit down and write 25 things that she's grateful for. As she wrote them down, I told her she couldn't turn on the TV until she wrote down 25 things she's grateful for. She whipped them out really quickly, brought me the list, and I said, don't show me the list. This is your list. This is the things that you're grateful for. And I'm not here to judge the things that you're grateful for. But I think what you're talking about, this rational living and thinking and this concept of approaching the world really takes stepping back and recognizing what we have, what we're blessed with, what we're grateful for, and how that applies in our lives.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, my friend, our next question is your leadership superpower.
I believe that I am one of the most compassionate, empathetic leaders out there. I really care about the people who work with me and for me. I care about my clients, sometimes to my own detriment. But I just think that taking care of people is my mission in the world, and doing that compassionately and with empathy is what it's all about.
And I think there's an absolute business success sense to this, what you just talked about. Before we hit record, we were talking about some of the impact of the current environment and the coronavirus and some of the things that have happened to businesses throughout this whole experience. And you shared that, you could have been essentially laid off from some of your speaking assignments. And yet you have developed such rapport and confidence with these teams that they said, you know what, we're willing to work with you in ways that, 2-3 weeks, 2 months ago, we wouldn't have imagined. And I think that really goes to your superpower.
Yep. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right, our next question. A motivational philosophy quote or mantra, something that you live by.
I say it all the time. It's a wonderful quote by Maya Angelou. You've probably heard it before. People will forget what you said, and people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
And how does that relate to the respectful leader?
Well, what the science tells us is that people do over time forget what you said and what you did, but once they have a sense of how you made them feel, that feeling stays with them throughout the life of the relationship. So in my professional opinion, that it is our job to help people feel good about us as leaders, especially when we first meet them. And if we do, that feeling will carry through no matter what happens afterwards.
And think about how we started. A lot of this conversation here was revolving around influence step number one, be first to respect. And what you're
Yes.
saying is when you put that out into your business, into the atmosphere that you're working, into the universe, if you will, that's what you're going to see coming back your way. There really
Yes.
is some truth to this idea of karma.
Yeah. I believe in karma 100%.
Well,
Yes.
we're kindred spirits on that one, Greg. All right, our next question is the book that you most often gift or refer to friends, family, and colleagues.
Well, I wish I could say there's just one, but the one I'm going to answer is What Got You Here Won't Get You There by Marshall Goldsmith. It's an eye opener for so many folks who have moved into the role of manager or leader out of what we call subject matter expertise status. And you may have succeeded at a certain level, but once you reach a higher level, all of a sudden your way of operating needs to change. You must adapt yourself to be who you need to be at that higher level. We cannot continue to succeed as leaders if we just do the same old thing that got us up to the first level. And this is so often what we see. I often work with senior executives who have been put in the highest level position, and all of a sudden people are going, well, you're not a good leader anymore. And they're going, wait a minute, I haven't changed anything. That's the problem.
The world went on without you, my friend.
Exactly. So yes, that's a key. We have to develop as human beings at every stage as we grow through our lives. We can't just rely on what we've always done.
Yeah, and the explanation that you just gave is even better than the book recommendation. I love that, and I think it's so pertinent today of what we're talking about. Greg, we could talk for the rest of the night, but alas, we got to let you go. And before we do, please tell us, we'll link all those websites that you already mentioned, but tell us a little bit about your book, how we can pick up a copy, and then we'll let you go for today.
Thank you so much. My book's called The Respectful Leader, 7 Ways to Influence Without Intimidation. And it sounds like a how-to book. Well, it actually is a business fable. It's about a fictitious biomedical device company here in San Diego, and it's populated by realistic people who are like the people I've met throughout my 25 years of work with realistic problems. And it's about a new CEO who gets installed to turn it all around. He's got problems with his kids at home. His daughter is a little older than yours, and just you wait, my friend. And it's all the challenges he goes through, and eventually he learns from a gal in maintenance about what true respect is all about and how you can really generate a powerful, a successful culture with respect. So it's a story. You can read it in 90 minutes, and then the second half of the book is sort of a breakdown of the concepts and the ideas that I introduced in the story. But most people said, I just love the story. I love the characters. It's a real page turner, and that's how I wrote it. I didn't want it to be anything more than a cracking good story. And you can get it at barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com. It's in PDF form. It's an audiobook. It's out there. So I hope you'll all buy my book.
Yeah, we'll link it up on the show notes so they can get it from there. Greg, this has been a blast. You've got a big smile on your face. You've had one the entire show. Those listening on the iTunes won't know that, but it's true. Thank you for coming on this week's episode of Modern Leadership. Thank you for being our guest expert.
Thank you for having me. It's been a super pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Modern Leadership Podcast. You can find me on Facebook at Speaker Jake, on Twitter at Jake A. Carlson, and of course the website, jakeacarlson.com. See you there.